a production of the Mesa Chamber of Commerce. Visit us at mesachamber.org.
Talk about that. We are very lucky this morning. Thank you, Representative Udall, for being with us always so early in the morning. And we know that you have a big job to do these days. And I'm hoping that everyone knows, if I may be so bold, Michelle, and that she is it's your second term, right?
Third.
Third. Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Excuse me.
It's weird.
Sorry.
It's weird that it's been that long, but yeah.
Did you ever think, right?
No.
Right. So let's see. So you are obviously, and you're now the chair of the House Education Committee. Is that right?
That's
so
correct.
And you're always here to talk for us and to us about what's going on in our education world. And so again, we welcome you and hope that you'll enlighten us. And thank you. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you. We have a few things that I'm super excited about that we're working on this year. I think the most exciting one I'm working on with the governor's office on something called Operation Excellence. And the goal of that is to have no more D and F schools in the next 3 years. We know that we have some amazing schools in this state, but we also have areas where the schools have been D or F schools for decades. Since we started letter grades, some of them have persistently been failing schools. And so we've worked on a project with them. It will give those schools a few choices and options, as well as some supports and some money to fix some things that are wrong. So the first option that they will have is to work with a group like Project Momentum or Beyond Textbooks, somebody that has some real experience in going into low performing districts and making long lasting changes. Project Momentum we saw in Avondale, went into Avondale School District. I think this is their 4th year now since they began the project. And they had, I believe, 2 B schools when they started, and the majority of their schools were D or F. They had a few C's, but mostly D's and F's. Within 3 years, they were all A and B schools. And even during the pandemic, their test scores actually improved, which is unheard of. They continue to see improvement even through the pandemic. So we're seeing long-lasting systemic change in a district that was not doing well. And we're seeing that wherever Project Momentum has been done. That is probably the most dramatic instance we have in the state, but everywhere that Project Momentum has been done, it has been successful. So we want to do more of that. That is what we need to see. Project Momentum goes in and it works with the leadership in the district. It works with the community to create a plan to look at what some of the root causes of why the failures are happening, what are the needs, works with the community and a third of the teachers at a time. It works first with kind of the teacher leaders in the community, the ones that tend to be picked to do things first. And that tend to lead other teachers. So they work with them first, and then the next year, the next third, and the next year, the next third. And so they really create a culture of high expectations and how to reach them and using data to make good decisions for their students. So that would be the first option that a school has, and we would give the funding that they need to do that, which is about $150 per student. If they choose not to do that option, or they don't make improvements over the first 3 years, there are a couple other options. One is to allow a high performing school to come in and take over operations of that school. And that high performing either charter or district school would make decisions for that school. The school would still be a part of the district they're a part of now, but the other operator would be managing pretty much everything within that school. The final option would be for them to completely close that school and sell it or lease it to a high performing person or high performing system that would come in and take over the school, and that school would no longer be part of their district. So that gives them some options. But it says that if you don't make the improvements in 3 years, we're going to give you the support and everything, but if you don't make the improvements, we are going to make changes, because we can't allow failing schools in our state. We can't allow students to continue to be stuck in schools where they're not making progress. So I'm super excited about that. I think Something similar was done in Utah a few years ago, and they saw incredible success. All of their failing schools moved up within I think all but 2 of them had gotten out of DNF within 3 years. And the 2 that were left, one of them was really tiny and closed. They were kind of in the process of closing that one anyway. And the other one had made significant progress, but not all the way until they gave them a 2-year extension to continue working. So we have seen this work in other states, similar thing. So that's, I think, the most exciting thing I'm working on. I'm also working on a dual enrollment bill I've been working on with some of the community colleges, with school districts, and it would just expand access to dual enrollment throughout the state. A lot of our students here in Mesa have opportunities to take dual enrollment classes, although a lot of times there's a financial burden. The community colleges charge full tuition for those students, even though the high school is the ones providing the teacher, the facility, and everything else. And so the bill would set the maximum amount that a student has to pay at $125. And the state would chip in 100 of those dollars for students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch. So for those that have financial hardship, they wouldn't be expected to pay more than $25 per course. So they have some skin in the game, but it really removes the barrier to dual enrollment for a lot of our students. And then the other part would be if there is a dual enrollment class that has excess capacity and that teacher is willing to teach in a hybrid way, then a student from outside of that school or outside of that district could remote into that class and get credit. So we're working on some partnerships there to make sure that students throughout the state have access to dual enrollment. So those are my 2 most exciting proposals I'm working on. And I just want to see some real improvements in our state. I think both of those have the chance to see real improvements. We know that when students take dual enrollment classes, they're much more likely to go to college and be successful in college, especially first generation college students whose parents haven't gone to college are so much more likely both to go to college, to think that they can go to college, and then to be successful there. So we'd really like to see expansion in that throughout the state, but here in Mesa too, we'd like to see more and more students participate in dual enrollment. What else do you guys want to know about? We are working on some things. We know that parent involvement, transparency have been an issue, and we're trying to figure out ways to do those in ways that stop some of this parents against teacher stuff, but also provide that transparency and provide benefits for children. So we're trying to figure out how we walk that line and give the transparency that so many parents want, but also don't make it ridiculously difficult for teachers to be transparent. So as simple as possible ways to be transparent and to get feedback from parents, and try and make it less of a adversarial relationship between parents and teachers, because we know that most parents and teachers get along fine, and we'd like to help those relationships and make that a better situation than it is right now. Aside from that, I'm happy to answer questions, whatever questions you want. Those are my priorities right now. I have a whole lot of bills I'm running, but can't remember all of them. No. Just working on a lot of it's small technical fixes to little things here and there, that just problems that have popped up that we're trying to fix. But those are the main ones. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. I think it was said earlier, I think it's been a long week for a lot of people. So without having a list in front of you, I'm sure we're all very tired for some reason. This is what happens after, well, it was a 4-day week, wasn't it, for a lot of people? So you got holidays and then a 4-day week, and it just all piles up. And do we have any questions? I have one if nobody else does, but anybody have a question for Representative Udall?
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
Good morning, Representative Udall. Nice to see you again.
Good morning.
Can you talk to us? Well, your career at the legislature has been focused on 2 things: education and workforce. Can you talk a little bit about the workforce development bills that are out there? I mean, the students of today are the workforce of tomorrow. So thank you for all your work that you've done throughout your career, and hopefully that'll extend on into the future. But can you talk about the workforce development efforts that are moving forward this year? There's talk of doing CTEDs, doing associate's degrees and some other things. Can you share with us about that?
Absolutely. And that's another one that I love. I hope we can get through the finish line. The community colleges are pushing back on that one. But I think we can get it done. EVIT came to us last fall and said, hey, we would love to offer associate's degrees. When we take our students through their courses, they're usually only a few credits short of an associate's degree. But when they go to transfer them to the community college, those credits aren't transferring and they're having to start over. So if we could offer those last few classes, we could get them associate's degrees. They're already pursuing accreditation through a national accreditor. And so that is the proposal. The community colleges are saying, well, if they're not using Higher Learning Commission, who is the accreditor that they use, then those credits still won't transfer. So that's a dead end for them. But I mean, getting that associate's degree makes a difference. And so right now, what's happening a lot of times is those students just aren't getting an associate's degree. They're getting their workforce certificate and they're leaving and joining the workforce, which is great. But if they could get an associate's degree with just a few more classes, that would be a huge benefit to them. So I'm working on that one that I'm excited about. Representative Kaiser and I have been working together on a bunch of workforce bills. We actually are meeting later today. The interesting thing about the workforce bills that are out there is they're all putting it in different agencies. So we need to have a talk about what agency is the best fit for a lot of those adult education and workforce bills and what's the best system, rather than doing it different for each vendor or different for each situation. But there are several. The Goodwill Excel Centers are an incredible thing that has been happening in other states, where they take adult learners who dropped out of high school and they get them both a high school diploma, but also some job training, usually some kind of a workforce certificate. And it's an incredibly successful program. Their success rates are off the charts, and their return on investment is incredible. And so we worked with the governor's office to get them some ARPA dollars to start. I believe they will open this coming fall. Their first one, I think it's in the West Valley, sadly, but or no, maybe it's in downtown Phoenix area. I don't remember exactly where they're going to put it, but I think that's an incredible opportunity. I'd like to see that expanded. There is one that works with the community colleges on their adult ed program. There's another one that allows alternative schools, which are schools that are mainly for high-risk students, high risk of dropping out and not finishing, to continue until they're 25, instead of cutting them off at 21. So there are several bills in the process that are working on increasing workforce and what we're calling workforce translation, getting people through school, trained, and into the workforce quickly, because we know that's a big issue.
Thank you.
Workforce translation. I'm writing that down.
Workforce translation, not just workforce training. We want it to actually translate into the workforce.
Well, it's all very interesting, and I'm a little slow myself. I'm an adjunct at South Mountain Community College, and so I was there till 10:30 last night. And interesting. It's their participation with you, simply because I know that community college enrollment is down across the board, and so it's you have a lot on your plate. Again, I have a question, but does anybody else want to ask Representative Udall a question at this time? Okay, so my question is, the gray hairs on my head attest to the fact that I've been through one or more socioeconomic changes in my life. We're going through, obviously, another major event. And as I said to my students last night, that we're just still trying to get through this pandemic. We haven't really gotten our arms around everything, the impact of it in totality. And yet the schools are certainly feeling it at all levels. And so I wonder if that has yet to impact your thinking about a number of things. You started out with the discussion of failing schools. Do you see that being impacted more substantially as a result of the pandemic. So when we finally get back to a normal and we're not worried about the teeter-totter effect that we've been going through, do you see yourself and the rest of us having to think differently about how we're providing education for our youth?
Yeah, I think the pandemic has shown us a lot of things. First of all, it's shown us that we can do hybrid, we can do online, but it's also shown us that it's not the best fit for most students. The majority of students do better in person, even when they do have good broadband access. So it's also shown us that our broadband access across the state is not sufficient. And so that's something we've had to work on so that our students have internet access and our teachers and our schools have internet access across the state. So that's definitely been an eye opener about how bad the broadband is in some areas and the access is in some areas. But also, so for the past, I want to say 8 years before the pandemic, we saw the highest growth rates for academic achievement of any state in the country. Our students were improving at higher rates than anyone else. And to the tune of, for 1 year of education in Arizona, our students on average were getting, I think it was 1.17 years worth of learning compared to all other states. That's great. But we also took some of the hardest hits during the pandemic. We saw ours dip further than a lot of states. Not at the bottom, but it dipped a lot. And so we have a lot to recover from. And particularly before the pandemic, we were seeing a narrowing of the achievement gap. We were seeing our highest growth students were our high poverty and low achieving students. We're seeing greater growth rates than our high achieving students. And so we've got to get back to that. We've got to get back to that focus on academics. The governor's working on a bunch of summer camps, what they call summer camps, some summer school programs. We're working with some really interesting people. One of the people from that we're working with is, I just forgot her name. It's Joan something. She has a group. It's the U Cubed group out of California that works on math in a way that is very different and very accessible to students at all levels, but really improves their critical thinking skills and their ability to succeed in math. And so I know we're working with her to set up some training and some summer camps for students in math. I think we're doing some of the same thing in reading, especially at the younger ages. So I think we'll see some, not just what you would think of as summer school, but some exciting ways to do summer school that will help with some of those gaps. But realistically, it's going to take years to fill in these gaps. It's going to be a long-term effort, and it's only going to happen if we keep our focus on academic achievement. We have got to stay laser focused on helping these students succeed academically. And that's not to say we ignore all other needs of our students. Obviously, they have social emotional needs, they have poverty that they're dealing with, they have trauma that they're dealing with. We can't ignore those, but we have to keep our focus on helping them achieve, because that ultimately is the way out of poverty and out of long-term generational poverty.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I just see education as being such an important topic in our state for several years to come. It was an important topic before the pandemic, and I think it's certainly risen to the top. I could talk to you all morning because there are just so many buckets that I think are important for us to focus on these days. So I know I'm very grateful for you being here and for all of your hard work. Certainly someone with your skill sets and backgrounds cheering for our education system is great. Any other questions for Representative Udall?
Hi, Joan. Jack Sellers.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, Jack.
Yeah, just a quick comment, Michelle. I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you're doing. You know, we continue to announce some very impressive economic development projects for this area. That means we're going to continue to have some very strong growth. And one of the things the companies that are coming into here are very concerned about is workforce. and having not just an educated workforce, but having education available for their children, for the employees that come in. So education and critical infrastructure are two items that we really need to be focused on to keep up with the kind of growth we're going to be seeing. So I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yes, in fact, there was one of the recent articles this week about, there are just so many about the big developments coming to Mesa. But we're talking about the draw for the right employee in the area. And so it is really critical to this area. Well, again, last call for any other questions. Well, thank you so much for joining us again this morning. We really appreciate it. Hope Zoom made it a little easier for you.
It does. Thank you. And thanks for having me. It's always good to talk to you guys.
Thank you. Well, good luck this year. We'll be rooting for you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
If I may take a little license with the agenda, Mr. Emmert, I know that you're up next, but I also see we have a visitor from Senator Sinema's office. Inder? Hi. You've had an exciting week.
It's been a fun week.
Indeed, indeed.
I'm not tired at all. Don't worry about me. I
So
gotta be in the West
grateful to
Side.
be here.
This is my East Valley morning.
Would you, certainly we don't want to impose upon you nor make you any more tired than you already are. Is there anything you'd like to share with your Mesa constituents at this time?
Sure. I think, John, I appreciate that. Good morning, everybody. I'd love to kind of just go over, what we've been doing, I'd say in the last week or two, because we have been in the news and it's been pretty vocal, but it's also an important conversation and important, it's an important situation to navigate, right, for the senator and for our office. So I'd love to share more about kind of what we're doing on voting rights. Then also just give a quick update on what we're seeing in the IIJA, bipartisan infrastructure bill space, because there's a lot of things coming down in the state as well. But kind of just to start, I think, as folks know, last 2 weeks in the Senate, and the U.S. Senate have been focused on voting rights and getting, working through some legislative proposals. I want to kind of read from our positions and points on this, because it is so niche and it is so direct. So I will just kind of read a little bit about what we said. But for folks that don't know, Senator Sinema voted again this week to support legislation that safeguards and expands Americans' access to the ballot box. These are these two bills that are being proposed in the House. That she believes strengthens faith in our elections. She's however, maintained that her longstanding opposition to separate actions, right? These are the changing the vote thresholds in the Senate, because they would deepen our divisions and risk radical reversals in federal policy, that she actually believes would cement uncertainty in our government. Thursday's votes, must not be the end, in her opinion, right, of our work to protect democracy, but that goal requires that all Americans everywhere unite around sustained strategies to support free, fair, and open elections where every vote is counted. And so that can't be solved by Washington alone. We need a lot of people to come together on that. But like she said, that vote for all the folks that are wondering, right? This isn't just us just tanking bills that we disagree with. The senator is a co-sponsor of some of this legislation, but it is not that she just doesn't support changing the legislative requirement to have 60 votes to get things done, because she believes the Senate is a deliberative body that brings people together and that requires strong majorities to ensure that we're passing legislation that a supermajority of this country agrees with. So she just remains committed to working with her colleagues in both parties to strengthen America's democracy and finding lasting solutions. And this is a position that I think this is obviously a Democratic caucus led bill and effort as well. But there are Republicans in the caucus as well that want to do parts of this. So it's not entirely bipartisan, right? There is ideally some path forward here. I think we were hearing, this is just public reporting, but that Senator Murkowski of Alaska has said that they're bits and pieces she wants to pull out. I know there's the election integrity or the Electoral College Act that even Republican members are suggesting as well. And so, I think there is a really substantial path forward, and the senator has really deep conversations with their Republican colleagues about things that matter in these bills. And maybe while they don't want to talk as publicly about it, there's a lot of consensus to be had, and so we'll keep having those conversations, certainly. And then I'll just say broadly on the filibuster review, because I think I always find that a lot of our chamber contacts are just interested again in either where we are on this or where we are today on this. It is the same place we have been for the last year or two on this, right, or even longer, I'll say. Senator Sinema has consistently held the same view on the filibuster during 3 terms in the U.S. House as well. And when she was elected to the U.S. Senate, right, she opposes eliminating the Senate's 60-vote threshold because the filibuster is a tool that she believes helps protect the country from those wild swings. Her support for retaining the threshold is not based on the importance of any one policy, right? This isn't just which way the wind blows. That's not really consistent. It's based on the likelihood of what can happen in the future, right? It's repeated reversals, cementing uncertainty, deepening divisions, and all those other things that come with just using simple majorities to pass some things in the Senate. And I think practically, right, we want people to understand that the senators asked people who want to eliminate the legislative filibuster for the People Act, for example, would it be good for our country if we did it only to see that in a few years from now it gets replaced by some other radical nationwide voting ID law just because the political parties change? That's not ideal. That doesn't build faith in elections. And so there are some practical consequences to think about. So that's kind of what I'll say on that. Outside of that, we are, legislatively working on, we're still on a continuing resolution, so working to fully fund the government, I believe. And then we are also working on, let's see, whatever comes out of, obviously BBB is kind of on hold right now. There's some prospectus for a piece together package on some other items that people can agree on, but again, that's still kind of down the line. We're still kind of working through the voting rights block here, but we might see more in a couple of weeks. I think there's an appetite to get something passed. Again, this is just the general report. We will have to see what actually remains to be seen, but I think there's still some bipartisan meat to kind of pull off this. In the outside of the BBB space, it's nice to kind of talk about some money coming down from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, right? This is the Sinema-led bipartisan infrastructure bill. We're proud to announce that $61 million, it was recently announced that $61 million will be invested in Arizona in 2022 for wildfire prevention. That money is actually being directly invested into a couple initiatives, including the Forest Restoration Initiative, which helps manage our overgrown forests in northern Arizona, which are contributing to wildfires. It'll also support the Museum Fire Sediment Reduction Project. There's some major flooding in Flagstaff. You guys have heard that's going to really work to remedy that. Great to see. The Flagstaff Watershed Protection Project helps, again, with water sources. The Coconino National Forest Cragen Watershed Protection Project. For folks that don't know, Phoenix the Phoenix metro area gets a significant amount of water from the north, right? And so we want to make sure we're protecting those watersheds so that we have a clean, healthy water supply for years to come. That supports that project as well, as well as the Tonto National Forest Cooperative Forest Restoration Project. Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act also was recently announced that about $50 million are coming down specifically for to support the drought contingency plan at Lake Mead. So this is obviously up north, but it's going to be a project to help. Excuse me, I'm rephrasing this wrong. $50 million to support the DCP, including $500,000 for the Verde Reservoir's sediment mitigation project. Again, another project focused on improving drinking water access. And so, for folks that can recall, this is, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is the strongest investment in clean drinking water and wastewater infrastructure in U.S. history. Our goal is to deliver clean drinking water to as many Arizonans as we can, right? To all Arizonans, ideally. It's something like $8 billion. The whole bill nationally, it's $8 billion to strengthen drinking water, including throughout the American West, to support water storage, water recycling, and other drought contingency efforts. And then last thing I'll mention here, there's some legislation we co-sponsored and introduced Recently, Senator Sinema introduced the Bipartisan Chance to Compete Act with Republican Senators Bill Hagerty of Tennessee and James Lankford of Oklahoma. This bill makes federal job hiring fair for Arizonans and all Americans by reducing traditional bureaucratic barriers that limit opportunities. What are some examples of this? Instead of relying on subjective self-evaluations or keyword search resume reviews or all those other things that I guess our federal jobs board, human resources folks use, we're encouraging folks to look through other actual job evaluations to see if applicants can have the job. This is especially true in Arizona, where we have a lot of skilled labor that might not have a college degree, for example, but who are really ready to work and are the right people for the job. And so we're helping, improve hiring in state for federal workers. And I think last thing here, actually, that's all I have. That is good for me. If you guys have questions that I can help answer, happy to talk, but Joan, I appreciate the time.
Well, thank you for being here. Certainly, I'm sure you're exhausted, but we really do appreciate sharing with us. Any questions for Inder while we've got him?
Just a quick thank you to him about the wildfire, talking about that, and also the Verde sedimentation project. Yeah, thanks absolutely for your work and the senator's work.
It's been, last year was a busy year. This one's going to be busy too. So again, we thank you. We love having you anytime you want to bring some news. And certainly you guys make sure you get a little sleep. So thank you very much. Yes. Oh, yes, sir. I thought you were just waving.
Hey, Ender, good to see you, buddy. Two things. Number one, short term, you're going to take some arrows, obviously, from Democrats. While the business community doesn't necessarily have a position on the so-called Voting Rights Act that was going through the Senate and voted on this week, the fact that Senator Sinema held her position and belief in the filibuster is something that we all appreciate, and I hope that you will share that with her. That maybe in the short term you're going to take some arrows, but I think in the long term that the Arizona populace understands what was occurring and appreciates her position on things.
Absolutely. I think, Eric, I appreciate that. And I've been telling, I like to describe it in terms of what I've been telling my friends too, right? It's the people you're closest with that you have the hardest conversations with. And in those conversations, I just said, it'd be so much easier for us to sit and fold and kind of just go with what way the wind blows. But the senator's held this position when she was in the House and when she's in the Senate. And that principled kind of leadership is what we promised Arizonans, and that's what we're delivering on.
Don't let the Twitter trolls beat you down.
Yep, exactly right. Very good advice, sir.
Joan, if I can, just for one more thing for the group, I think if folks will find this interesting, I'll just drop it in the chat. The senator gave a really, really strong speech on the floor, almost 20 minutes, kind of outlining, her position on the bills. She's supportive of the bills, but not the action to get rid of the 65 threshold. And these are president's bills. This is the caucus's bills. I mean, so it's a misnomer for folks that are calling us to say that we don't support voting rights, because that's just not true. It's the process. And so for folks that would like to see what she has to say, I'm happy to drop that speech in the chat. It is a Senate floor speech. If you're listening to a podcast or something, I encourage you to give us 20 minutes and check it out. It's really good.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Okay. And I'm just putting a couple of people. Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you, but we have Councilmember Freeman and Supervisor Sellers here as well. So I'm going to give them an opportunity before we're done to make any comments that they'd like to about their jurisdictions. But Eric, if you want to give us an update again, I'm sure we're starting out as a busy year in the legislature.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Second week of the session. Last week, the governor gave his State of the State speech and kind of outlined his priorities for the session. Sally, I am unable to grab screen share. That's okay. You guys can just listen to my talking head, I guess.
You should be able to get in.
There we go. All right. Let's start this here. But before we jump into the session and what's going on, I would like to share with you a bit about the work of the Independent Redistricting Commission and how that impacts Mesa. These are our new congressional maps. Largely, this will be Andy Biggs, and this will be Greg Stanton. So not many changes there. There were some changes right here in that section, but congressional maps will largely stay the same in Mesa. The difference here is in the legislative maps. Here you see the good folks from Tempe represent West Mesa. We have District 25 here, and then District 16 over here in Southeast and East Mesa. That's going to change over here. The Tempe folks have kind of been pushed out, and we'll have Mesa represented by a District 9 in West Mesa. Downtown and East Mesa will be represented in District 10. And then we'll have another district down here in the southeast part of the community. This is the 202 for orientation. This is the 60. District 15, that'll be the airport area, Southeast Mesa, and the inner loop area. So some changes coming to Mesa the next election. This has got to go to the Department of Justice to make sure everything's good. And then if there are any litigation challenges, it's got to withstand that. Moving on to the governor's state of the state and the executive budget. He offers a budget every first Friday of the session to kind of set the tone and kind of set the rails that he believes, or priorities that he believes that the legislature should focus on as it's going through the budget. He highlighted workforce training. He knows we all have a problem hiring people. So he's creating 6 advanced manufacturing training centers facilitated by community colleges. We already have one within Maricopa Community College District, but pay attention to that because it's going to be a workforce pipeline, especially to our manufacturers in Mesa and some of the semiconductor businesses that are coming to town. Representative Udall talked about the learning camps for kids who have fallen behind during COVID. That's a good thing. He's increasing funding for STEM and workforce program aid to Maricopa, Pima, and Pinell community colleges. That's something that we've advocated for. And then the New Economy Initiative. If you guys aren't paying attention to this, please do, because it's really important to Mesa. What ASU is talking about doing is setting up a school that would act as a pipeline into manufacturing, especially the semiconductor stuff, as part of its New Economy Initiative over at Poly. This could be big for Mesa, especially for the East Valley, to create that synergy around manufacturing. And the governor's got 46 million in there to help support that activity. As far as infrastructure, to draw down some of the money that good Senator Sinema has gotten into the infrastructure package at the federal level. He's got 400 million coming in for I-10 expansion between Phoenix and Casa Grande. If you've ever driven that section of interstate, it's 2 lanes each way. And if you get a jackknife tractor trailer or a, God forbid, a death on that section of the interstate, it shuts down, it creates problems. It has an impact on the on-time delivery of goods and services. And it's something that we've advocated for some time. So good stuff in there for that. There's also some rural transportation money in there. That is not the end of the transportation discussion. There are rural projects that will be put into another bill that will likely end up in the budget. And there's also that kind of weaves into the good work that Jack Sellers did on the regional transportation plan, because we have to reauthorize Proposition 400, which paid for the 202, expansion of the 60, the 101, our transit services in the valley. That's up for reauthorization in 2025, as we've talked about in the past. So all that is taking place in the world of transportation, but the governor has committed some one-time money for transportation to help draw down those federal dollars. And then water. We've got a water problem. Lake Mead is pretty low. And the governor has suggested we invest $1 billion over a period of years for water credits, for desalination technologies, maybe be able to work something out with Mexico to the south to help us out here. There's some irrigation technology stuff that is being proposed, but he's suggesting we dedicate some money for that as well. That is the wrong slide. Let's go on to business legislation. We have a bill, House Bill 2013. It's a theft by extortion bill. Anyone who's a small retailer or hospitality business in the East Valley may have experienced this lately. We've seen more and more people coming into a hotel and saying, I want a free room night, or I'm going to leave a bad review about you on TripAdvisor, or I want a free X, or I'm going to do Y. At the point in time when you say that, I want a free, or I will do X, that is by definition theft by extortion. Our problem is our statutes haven't been modernized to allow for the technology platforms we have today, like Yelp and Google reviews and those sorts of things. So we're going to try and modernize those. Innocent sellers is some protection for our retailers that sell something that the manufacturer has either shut down or did something wrong and the seller didn't know about it. So we're some additional protections there that we'll be supporting. There are going to be some tax reforms. It's very complicated depending upon what happens with a Prop 208 court case and revenue control limits and how to offset those tax cuts and whatnot. There may be some repeal and replace reforms coming on that. Electric reliability. Oh, Jack, I saw your mouth.
Yeah, Eric. So innocent sellers doesn't refer to me.
I don't know, Jack. I'm betting you buy a lot of wine and Amazon stuff, so it may apply to you. Electric tax reliability. Our good folks over at SRP have a great bill that is going through that takes out some desegregation statutes that are antiquated, puts in some consumer protections. Mesa has its own utility, but and there's some stuff in there for them as well. It's a good bill. It's 2101, and we're supportive of it. There are a lot of anti-vax bills that are being introduced at the legislature that take away employers' rights to say, no, as a condition of employment, you're a hospital, we need to have a vaccinated population. Of course, the employee has the right to say, no, I'm not agreeing to that condition of employment. I'm going someplace else. And in this job market, that may actually benefit them. But regardless, there have been a lot of bills introduced on that. Minimum wage hike, what the Arizona Restaurant Association is proposing is an increase in the state minimum wage, which is 12 something right now, up to $15 an hour over a period of time, which they believe would naturally occur. In return, they want to take away cities and towns' abilities to increase their minimum wage above the state level. That's happened in Flagstaff. It's happened in Tucson. They're concerned it would happen in Phoenix. Not a big deal here in Tempe, I don't imagine, or in Mesa, I imagine, but Tempe may have a problem with that. So we'll take a look at that bill. Haven't taken a position on it. Personal property tax threshold. If you are a small business with a lot of assets that or equipment, you pay a personal property tax on that above a certain threshold. We're talking about increasing that threshold. And then lastly, of course, the Proposition 400 reauthorization. Again, this is the legislative authorization or ability for the County Board of Supervisors to put that tax on and Regional Transportation Plan on the ballot. We're on the lobbying team for that one. Vote County is candidly going very well. Looking really good. And in closing, just want to thank Supervisor Sellers for all his work on that particular plan. We hope to we hope the legislature allows you to put it on the ballot so that we can vote as a citizenry here in the fall. With that, be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Somebody give him a hard one. Oh, well, I missed you all at the governor's state of this state. But again, what a busy year we're going to have. No rest for the weary. And Eric, I'm counting on you keeping us informed all of these things. Some good stuff happening, I think.
Yeah, and Joan, I just want to give a
Yes.
shout out to our partners from Jack and Councilmember Freeman to Julie Graham and Ian and Blaze and Mark Gaspers and all the folks that work in public affairs. We're such good partners. We communicate with each other really well, and I appreciate the fact that they share information with us and tell us what's occurring within their particular industries or municipality or county. The communication is really helpful for us who are telling the stories to the legislators and explaining to them the practical applications of what they're deciding down there. Because you all are running your businesses, you're doing what you need to do. And the fact that we can have such a good partnership with SRP or whomever is really helpful. So I just appreciate you guys very much.
Ditto. Yeah. Very good.
Goes both ways.
It's just a love fest on a Friday morning. Okay, very good. Let's see, council member, I haven't seen your real face yet, but Jack, is there anything that you'd like to, oh, he's coming off mute, but Jack, is there anything that you'd like to tell the group about this morning? And then we'll ask council member Freeman if he's got anything.
I'll be brief because all of you have heard from me a lot. But you know, I'm just very optimistic about 2022. I'm encouraged that I'm finally going to get to spend some time on my real priorities as a county supervisor, and that is trying to continue the lifestyle that has made us such an attractive place for economic growth.
Excellent. Do that. Well, we enjoy having you as well. Look forward to your updates. Council member, anything going on in Mesa that you'd like to, in your district, that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Tag on to Mr. Sellers. You know, recently, myself and a couple of colleagues, we met with EVET and we talked about STEM development and pipelines and leveraging, you know, employers to create this employment base that we so much need in all our municipalities in the Valley. And, you know, it's going to take a village, let's say, for all of us to get this, because as employers come into the Valley, and especially Mesa, they ask, well, what's your employment base and where are they located? So we've got to groom this way from, as you know, from elementary to high school and into to our community colleges as well as our four-year colleges. So with that said, yeah, you know, that's something that the city, you know, we've been supporting for many years, and that's Mayor Giles' agenda as well. There's been lots of development and infill in all of our districts here. As you know, we can't keep out of the paper, which is great because a lot of industrials has been moving on, and we're taking a lot of our ARPA monies. We've got $105 million, and we're leveraging those dollars into infrastructure development for our community and future growth. If we're not looking out 5 to 10 years ahead, we're going to be behind. So we're trying to get all this development done so we can grow and develop. And as you know, District 6, Kevin Thompson's district's on fire. A lot going on out there. And I can defer to Ian. Ian, what did I miss? I'd like to hear from you just a little bit. He sits in some of these meetings that I don't.
No, I mean, you nailed it. Mesa's doing really, really well. So it's very exciting, keeping everybody very busy. The one thing maybe we could talk about that is of interest to this group too is council just authorized us to go out and do a nationwide search for some additional broadband within Mesa. So we're trying to get our city covered basically in fiber. And so next week we're going to kind of release what we call a request for information to let folks know that that's a big interest to Mesa. So I'm happy to share that with anybody. And then also something that's really cool that ties into our school districts, especially on the west side, is our IT team is standing up our own cellular towers and can cover roughly around 10 square miles. And then the school districts will hand out devices and basically routers to kids who need it, who can access this cellular towers for free and basically get free internet from the city of Mesa for those, again, that qualify. So those are some really cool things. Again, it all kind of ties together. It's the workforce development, the education piece, and then just setting us up for a great future. So lots of fun stuff.
Thank you, Ian. With that, hey, I think we're done on the city side. Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean,
Certainly.
hey, we're rocking and rolling every council meeting, a lot going on. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Well, very good. Thank you. It's just a pleasure to spend this time with all of you. What a positive note to launch 2022. And does anybody have anything else that they need to bring forward this morning? All right. We have our next meeting scheduled for February 18th. And I know our discussion was we'll stay Zoom as long as we need to stay safe. So we'll see certainly what things look like next month. In either case, I will look forward to seeing you again. Hope you have a safe 30 days, 28 days. And thank you very much for being here. It'll be a great year.
Stay connected to Mesa Chamber social media, email newsletters, Monday morning message, and mesachamber.org to always know what's happening at your Mesa Chamber.